Hi, I'm Mark Regev here today with my co-host Ruthie Blum, and we are doing another episode of Israel Undiplomatic. And we are recording in Israel on Sunday, the 20th of October at lunchtime.
Hi, Mark. I think we should tell the viewers that the reason that you mentioned the date of our taping is that events are happening so quickly that we can't keep up. As soon as one thing has in the headlines, something else overtakes it. So what we're going to start with today is the elimination of Yahya Sinwar. And it was a huge deal. It still is. And we need to talk about the significance of that and what that means for Israel and the Middle East and the United States going forward.
So it was a big deal. And, unlike the assassination, let's say, of Nasrallah, the Hezbollah leader, what's that, already 3-4 weeks ago? It's interesting the way Sinwar met his end, because it wasn't a targeted Israeli operation. These were Israeli ground forces in combat in southern Gaza, and they were cleaning out an area of terrorists, and they came across him. And it was just, in war, there's sometimes a lot of bad luck and sometimes there's good luck. And we just had good luck. We were there. Maybe that's not luck. There was a policy decision that we should be there. Many people internationally and even inside Israel said we shouldn't be there. That was the whole debate over Rafah, remember, over the being so close to the Gaza-Egyptian border. But we were there. We were mopping up. We were fighting terrorists. And we got him.
Absolutely. In that sense, it wasn't an accident at all. It's true that we didn't realize until after he was killed that we finally nabbed the architect of the October 7th massacre, who was known, by the way, as the Butcher of Khan Yunis. Years before, he sat in Israeli prison for 22 years for his killing a lot of people with his bare hands, gleefully, by the way. And we cured him of a brain tumor, which is interesting.
While he was in jail.
While he was in prison. And he was released in 2011 as part of the Gilad Shalit exchange. And what is really poetic justice is that he was hit in the head. I mean, it seems that his final demise was caused by a head injury, and that is exactly where we saved his life from his brain tumor. That's one thing. Another interesting thing is that his arm was severed, and this is after Hirsch Poland, who was a hostage for all these, for the entire year, was executed in cold blood in a tunnel with 5 other hostages very recently. And when he was taken into Gaza, his arm had been blown off. So, I think none of that part wasn't intentional, but Sinwar deserved everything he got.
I agree 100%. Sinwar is a mass murderer. He was the instigator, the commander of the October 7th massacre. And we just have to go through, people know the details. But, they storm across the border, they behead, they rape, they mutilate, they burn people alive. 1,200 people killed. And, of course, some 250 taken back to Gaza to be hostage. And this is a man who, as has been said, is guilty of the greatest act of anti-Semitic violence since the Holocaust. This is a man who is guilty of responsibility for the greatest act of terrorism since 9/11 in the United States, and proportionally even greater than 9/11 in New York and at the Pentagon. And for all these reasons, taking him out was an act of historic justice.
Oh, absolutely. I think what's also important to note is that the IDF spokesman released footage, actually Hamas footage, from October 7th, showing Sinwar, his wife, and his children stocking up supplies in a tunnel, getting through tunnels, television, air conditioner, mattresses, food, everything, so that he could hide out while he sent, this was actually, apparently he did this right before the massacre. So while he was sending out all his goons to do the dirty work, he was making sure that his wife and kids and that he himself, more importantly, would be as safe as possible, and letting the others just take all the wrath of Israel that it came later. And it was an important video to release for the Gazans to see that actually Sinwar was not some big hero, but actually a big coward who was not really in charge. He was only in charge. He was ruling them through a reign of terror. But he cared about himself, telling them all they want to martyr themselves for Allah, but he himself didn't want to die. And
here, I think what you said is important. Why? You have all these people who claim to be friends of the Palestinians, who are, echoing Hamas talking points, either knowingly or unknowingly. But what they don't understand is actually, obviously Sinwar was the bitter enemy of Israel and the Jewish people. Obviously Sinwar was people used to call him like a little Hitler, yes? But anyone who's seriously interested in the well-being of the Palestinians should be equally as happy that he's been gone, because he brought nothing but terror and autocracy and suffering to the Palestinian people. I mean, that's his legacy, isn't it?
Absolutely. Although, let's just be clear here that 70 to 80% of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, in other words, Judea and Samaria, still support Hamas and still support the October 7th massacre. So let's get that straight. But aside from that, what is interesting about Sinwar's killing is that it emerged, as often has happened since the beginning of the war, including on October 7th, is that we're in the middle of a holiday. And so many observant Jews, observant Israelis, didn't know about this until hours later. That what was interesting is that the news was filled more with Hezbollah and Iran than it was, we had sort of switched from Gaza to Lebanon.
But we've discussed the taking out Sinwar, yes? That ultimately that was, as I said, that was historic justice. And this is, the difference between now and before the State of Israel was established. Today, the Jewish people can defend themselves and can eliminate threats. And in taking him out, we eliminated a great threat. But we haven't discussed the strategic implications yet of Sinwar. We've discussed morally, and it was obviously the right thing to do. But what are the strategic implications? And here you have this man who's been the dictator of Gaza for the last few years, the man responsible for the October 7th massacre, the man who ruled Gaza with an iron fist. And he is suddenly no longer there. And how does that affect as we move forward? There are people, including I think the United States government has said this, that is optimistic about the possibility of a hostage deal now, they say publicly that Sinwar was the biggest obstacle to getting a deal to get our hostages out, that he was the hardliner, he was the extremist, he didn't care about anything, and maybe now there is a hope, a chance that the hostages can be released in the framework of some sort of deal.
Well, first of all, I hate that word deal when we're dealing with terrorists. The trouble is that the only person left, apparently, to lead the Hamas in Gaza is Sinwar's brother, who apparently is even greater a sadist than he is.
That's very difficult, by the way.
Very difficult. But somehow he manages. And we have to stop talking about a deal. I would say Prime Minister Netanyahu announced to all the people of Gaza, he turned to them, he said, listen, anybody who releases hostages in his care, in his apartment, in his tunnel, will be allowed to leave and live. And anybody who doesn't is dead man walking. I am paraphrasing, not quoting. Since then, many have suggested that we just have to offer them lots of money, passports, whatever it takes. bribery to get those hostages back. Because a deal, what does a deal mean? A deal means Qatar, a huge enemy of Israel's and houses Hamas terrorists. It's a joke that they were even considered mediators. And Egypt, that allowed all those weapons to go into Gaza all these years. Again, and the United States should have been able, as the greatest power of the world, to pressure Qatar, where it has bases, it has military bases. It should have said to Qatar, you cough up those hostages right now. A year ago, America should have done that and didn't do that. And what we have now, what we're going to do, we have to both rescue them. Again, we're still in Gaza. We're killing as many terrorists as possible. We are searching for the hostages. And in the meantime, we have got to persuade all those Gazans who were too terrified, not because they love Israel or anything. Believe me, they're not pro-Israel and they don't care. But they do care about their own lives, understandably, and their families and their homes. And to make sure that they understand that now that Sinwar is gone, they are more free to make their own negotiation with Israel, and not through these mediators. Just give us the hostages, and you'll be allowed to live.
So I agree and disagree. I agree, of course, that if it's possible in this place or that place to make a deal with people holding hostages. You don't like the word, but if you say you can stay alive and we give you a passport and you can leave, right?
That's a deal.
That's a deal,
Okay.
right? That's a deal. I don't have another word for it. But is it possible? I mean, the model has to be in November, where we got over 100 hostages, live hostages out, and there was a deal, once again I use the word, which was negotiated with the help of the United States, Qatar and Egypt, and we got them out. Now, up until now, there's been efforts to try to do something similar, and Sinwar has prevented that from happening because of his own extremism, and he didn't care about anything except his holy war against Israel, yes? Is it possible that okay, if we can do it in isolated places, that's good, right? Everyone we save is a life saved, yes? It's a whole world. But if it's possible to do something larger, like we did in November, and here I want to say something to you. I've got no illusions about who the Qataris are and what their agenda is. Anyone who watches Al Jazeera knows exactly what the Qataris are promoting, this sort of anti-Israel, anti-Semitic diatribe. The Egyptians, I think it's fair to criticize them for allowing Hamas to bring in from the Sinai Peninsula weapons over the years. It's clear that was happening. But despite understanding exactly, the how do I say it? The imperfections of the interlocutors. I think if it's possible through their offices, I don't want to say good offices when I talk about the Qataris, but through their offices, if it's possible to get another large group of live hostages out, I say you use that track. Even though I agree with the criticism, especially of the Qataris are terrible. But if it's possible to get people out, you know what Churchill said about Stalin in the Second World War, that if he's an ally in the fight against Hitler, I'm willing to sing his praises and so forth. So I think it's the same. If the Qataris can actually help us get live hostages out, so I'm willing to sing their praises.
Right, but here's why I think it's an impossible scenario, and not because of Qatar or Egypt. It's because Sinwar, the only reason that he agreed to those deals in November was that he believed, and he had good reason to believe, that actually these pauses in the war would lead to an end of the war, because he knew America. He knows its customers, and he also knows the Israeli left and the pressures from the peace camp, et cetera, and that there was a lot of talk, ceasefire, as opposed to pause to get them out. And we were then negotiating, okay, we'll give you these prisoners and those hostages. And we had 3 sets of releases, and then Hamas on the 4th or the 3rd, now I can't remember the number it was, they were supposed to release the names of the hostages they were releasing and then do it, and they didn't release the names and instead fired rockets. And that is because Sinwar must have understood that Israel meant business, that this was not going to be an end to the war. We had said, we'll do these deals and then we resume fighting. And now it's clear, now Sinwar's dead, but his brother or anybody else who is a honcho in Gaza is clear to them that we have no intention of ceasing fire. We have to have victory, not a ceasefire. And therefore, I don't think there's any chance, even with Qatar or Egypt, of having a similar kind of deal. What we might do is threaten them that if they want Sinwar's body returned, they better release the hostages.
So I'm not sure the importance of Sinwar's body. If it was that simple, I'm, of course, all in favor. I just think that it's possible to get a deal not dissimilar to what we had in November. Obviously, Hamas's stated demands that Israel has to cease the war, not just cease the war, we have to pull out of Gaza and let Hamas retake over the Gaza.
Exactly.
That's a non-starter for Israel. No, that's just kicking the can down the road. That's going to have another October 7th happen again, right?
Exactly.
You can't allow Hamas to remain in power in Gaza. Their military machine has been largely destroyed, yes, but as a political movement, if they stay in charge in Gaza when this is over, then they'll just rearm and so forth. So it's clear that Israel can't allow that to happen. But is it in November we didn't agree to something like that, obviously,
but they thought
that
we'd cave, and they had good reason to, because Sinwar had studied the West. He especially studied Israel. He knew Hebrew fluently. He studied our culture. He studied American culture. He understood one thing. He understood that with certain kinds of pressure, it would be too much. And we saw domestically, as you pointed out, domestically and internationally, immediate pressure. Don't go in here. Don't go in there. Don't kill anybody. Don't. And let's have a ceasefire right away. And America has been consistent with that throughout the whole year. And he really believed, and as I said, he had good reason to believe that this would be an end to the war.
So what we can offer them for a prisoner release is a timeout, right? That's what we offered in November, and we can offer them a timeout again now. And maybe they are desperate enough because of taking out their leader, because of all the other senior Hamas people we've taken out, maybe today, and with a different leadership, maybe today that sort of deal will become possible. I'm not convinced that it's definitely going to happen, but I think the probability of it happening has increased precisely because Sinwar is no longer there.
Yeah, but a prisoner release, what does that mean, that word prisoner release? It's terrorists, and the terrorists whom they want released mostly are people just like Sinwar. I mean, we released Sinwar under such a deal.
But in November we agreed to prisoners being released. Let's be clear.
We did, because at that point, again, we still are. We were desperate, and we thought, okay, you know what? Take anything. We'll release those prisoners. In the end, we'll finish the war, and they'll be dead too. Who knows? Okay. The point is, and we needed those hostages back, and we would have kept going had Hamas kept going. Okay, Hamas stopped that deal.
Correct.
We did not.
Correct.
The point is now, if we release the prisoners they want, one in particular, Marwan Barghouti, all you're doing is replacing one bloodthirsty terrorist with another what is the point of refilling Gaza with people who could take over? And again,
so the point would be, and I think it's something we have to take seriously, is the point is to save lives of the hostages. I said very clearly before, we have to prioritize living hostages and not getting bodies back for burial. That's also a priority, but it's a secondary priority. The big priority is to get people out who are alive.
Question.
And I think to get people out who are alive, as we did in November, we can release people who should stay in jail for a long time. I know there's a lack of justice, but once again, I think to save a human life, if it's possible, we should be willing to take the risk.
Wouldn't you prefer to bribe them
I
with
prefer,
money?
Of course.
And as opposed to, we'll give you a bunch of terrorists?
We should try all options.
Here, carrot and a stick. We'll give you a lot of money and an ability to leave Gaza, passports, money, anything you need. Why?
I'm in favor. Ruthie, I'm not against that. I'm in favor of it. I'm just saying if that, maybe we'll get a few people out, but maybe we'll need a November-type deal to get more people out. But we'll wait and see. I think we should be doing everything. We should be working on the IDF rescuing hostages. Obviously, that's ongoing. It's difficult, has been difficult until now. We should do your idea, what we call it, the Ruthie plan, which is, money and passports. I'm all in favor of that. And I also think we should, if it's possible, to do a big group of hostages and get them released through the offices of Qatar and Egypt. I think we should do that as well. In other words, we should go on all tracks at the same time in parallel. And every time we get someone out, that's a good thing.
No, that's absolutely true. But now let's talk about Iran's involvement in all of this. And we have to mention something that we didn't mention at the start of the broadcast, and that is that yesterday, again, a holiday. I mean, it was a Shabbat. Again, all these things happen when observant people are not tuned into the news. Prime Minister Netanyahu's house in Caesarea was targeted by a suicide drone from Lebanon, but it was an Iranian assassination attempt on our prime minister. Now, luckily, he and his wife were not home when this happened, but damage was done to their home from the blast, and it was a clear message. Now, there is this rule: you don't assassinate leaders of countries. But you know what? Now, and Iran right away said, no, we didn't do it. Hezbollah did it, which of course is Iran and Hezbollah. The point being that now not only is our attack on Iran, whatever form that takes, imminent, even more imminent, but the question is now, if we don't have perfect legitimacy to take out Iran's supreme leader, who is pulling all these strings, who is endangering everyone. After all, apparently Netanyahu promised the Biden administration that Israel would not take out the oil fields in Iran or the nuclear facilities before November 5th. Now, I don't understand why the Biden administration would say that and don't do this and don't do that. So what do you want us to do? Kill a bunch of innocent Iranians? No. So obviously we've got to target something important. And, my hope is that it's those Ayatollahs who have ruined the Middle East and the world, and we've got to get rid of them.
So the Arab-Israel conflict has been going on for quite some time. Some people say 100 years. But never has Israel targeted the head of state of an Arab country, of an enemy Arab country.
Correct.
Not Nasser, who was the leader of the anti-Israel pan-Arabist movement in the 1960s. Not Assad in Syria, who was a terrible, ferocious enemy. The father and the son, yes? Always Gaddafi in Libya, who was responsible. It was like agreed we can attack terrorist leaders, right? Someone like Nasrallah, or someone like a leader of Hamas, yes, but we don't go for heads of governments of independent states. And what Hezbollah did yesterday was they broke that barrier. They said, we're trying to, when you attack, I mean, their intelligence is terrible because he wasn't there, yes. But you attack the home of the prime minister. That really is an attack to try to take out the prime minister. Did they know he was there? Did they not know? That's not the point. I think it's very serious. And for the Iranians to say it wasn't us, it was Hezbollah, that's double talk.
Of course.
No, the Iranians fund, arm, train, right? Every time we take out a senior Hezbollah leader, there's always some Iranian general in the room too, right? That's been, the beepers.
Of course.
There was an Iranian Revolutionary Guards, or the Iranian ambassador in Beirut was injured by the beepers or so forth.
Of course.
So they're intertwined. For the Iranians to say they're not involved is obviously they're probably sending messages today through European proxies. But let's be clear here, though. Israel has to think very carefully. I would say when we talk about, we still have to hit back against Iran for their attack on Israel. 181 missiles, ballistic missiles, just 3 weeks ago now. We have to hit them back. And I would suggest to you, because the Iranian people detest their regime, because the Iranian people really would like someone else to govern them and not this terrible Ayatollah regime, we should be very conscious that when we attack Iran, we go for a target that doesn't see the people unite behind the regime. And I think to hit a regime target, I didn't say specifically a person or this, but to hit a regime target, I think that's the right way to go. Absolutely,
which is what I said. Now, obviously, as far as we know, the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, scurried into an underground bunker as soon as he saw what was going on with the other leaders of his terrorist proxies. So we might not be able to get him. I don't know. We don't know. But again, there are a lot of targets in Iran that are not the people. And again, I think it's a mistake not to want to target the nuclear facilities. But, we can't do that without America's help. We just can't. Apparently, America could do it in 5 minutes, by the way, because America has the bunker busters. It has the capability. And we don't have as great a capability as America. So we've got to do it in a more clever way. Maybe we're going to do more cyber attacks. But somehow, I think, since we have been doing cyber attacks all along, and Netanyahu has said, no, this is going to be a big deal, I somehow think he's not just saying that. Normally he would not do that. I think that the threat is real, and we're actually anxious to see what it is. So far, I have to say, all along, Israelis and Americans, other people were saying, you know what, don't go into Lebanon because Israelis all over Israel will be living in bomb shelters. Thousands of people will be killed here and in Lebanon. And it turns out it wasn't true. Every time somebody warns us about something, same thing about going into Rafah in Gaza, it turns out it's not true. So this warning about how, we can't attack Iran because what they'll do in response, we won't be able to take. I no longer believe that. That's all. Whatever they throw at us, yes, we will intercept. We will go into our bomb shelters if we have to. This is a war. This is a war for our survival and, as Netanyahu has called it, our revival, renewal.
So the Iranians must be worried, the Iranian leadership, because they are convinced, though Israel never took responsibility, that we took out the Hamas leader of their Politburo, Ismail Haniyeh. What was that? That was 2 months ago in Tehran. And that was not an airstrike. That was an explosion. And I think the Iranian leaders are very worried not only about the possibility of an Israeli Air Force attack on a target in Iran, and as I said, I have a preference for regime targets, but I think they have to be worried also about something else happening. And if they're worried, I'm happy they're worried.
Oh, absolutely. They're right to be. They know or fear that we've got an inside job going on, and that's why they're turning on one another, which is also very good. It's also very good when they start to suspect one another.
The most important thing is that, Ismail Haniyeh and Sinwar, the Hamas leadership, were taken out. You attack Israel, you butcher our people, you will pay a price. Nasrallah, who many people thought we would never take out, you shoot rockets into Israel, you try to kill our people, you will pay a price. The Iranians have to pay a price. They cannot shoot 181 rockets, and that was their second attack, right? That was their second attack on Israel, direct attack from Iranian territory.
That's right.
And I think the Iranians, I wish the Iranian regime would fall, obviously, but if the Iranian regime is going to survive, it has to understand there are some things you don't do. And you attack Israel, Israel will respond in a way that hurts you more than you hurt us. And I think that's a crucial message for Israeli deterrence. And remember, there are other bad actors in this region, right? And they're looking. And Israel's friends in the region, the Arab governments who have good relations with Israel, some of them above the table, some of them below the table, they're all expecting, and we have to respond in a way that hurts the Iranian regime.
Absolutely. And I think what we could do is end on a note about what we hope for. This is not a prediction. I'm not good at predicting things often. When I've been asked to predict election results, I'm completely off. So I don't like to make predictions, but I do like to sometimes express my fantasies or my utopia. And in this case, my fantasy is that we will execute an amazing attack on Iran in some fashion, that I don't know what it is, on Simchat Torah, the holiday that was the Hebrew calendar of October 7th. And that holiday is coming up this Wednesday evening and Thursday is that holiday. And that is what I'm fantasizing, is that it will be a full circle, appropriate full circle.
So I don't want to give times or dates because, the Iranians might take us more seriously. We're just a podcast. We're two people who were in government but no longer in government, and we're not in the room as decisions are being made. But they deserve it. The Iranians deserve it. And you know, people talk about the head of the octopus and all this sort of thing. Like Hezbollah is a problem, Hamas is a problem, and we're dealing with them. But ultimately, neither Hamas nor Hezbollah or the Houthis in
or the
Yemen,
Iraqi militias.
all these people, without Iranian support, there'd be nothing. There'd be nothing.
Exactly.
And the Iranians have been playing this game for too long, and it's about time that Israel changed the rules of the game.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, which I would say is, I don't know if I'd call it a cheerful note, but I would say somewhat of an optimistic note, that we'll finish for today.
And of course, we're recording early because the Jewish holidays are later this week. And I think next week we will go back to our regular Wednesday broadcasting time. Until then, I look forward to seeing you again next week. And I look forward to being back here for the next episode of Israel Undiplomatic.
Absolutely, Mark.